All right, guys, we're going to move on to the second topic of today. We're going to get into our conspiracy bag.
Ooh, it's definitely conspiracy.
The guy who says, ooh, there's the one who came up with this topic. But
Shock.
for real. But we basically want to talk about, I don't even know how you intro this, but we want to talk about whether there is a systematic attempt
Ooh,
by the powers that be
the other man.
in the music industry to dumb us, the viewing and listening public, down with the type of music that they push into the world. Peter,
Yes, sir.
as the inventor of this topic and the best user of the word systematic, what made you think of this topic, bro? I can't wait for this. Old head alert.
Yeah, it's gonna sound like that, isn't it?
You're an old head, so it's cool.
Yeah, I guess. I've had this thought for time.
Really?
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, man. I've had this thought for time. When you look at, I guess, the music that is deemed to be the most popular, and you look at the artists that are deemed to be the most popular, they all seem to have the same sort of things in common, same sort of sound in common, content, same sort of stuff. And it just, for a time, it kind of felt like there just wasn't much range within hip hop. So it just kind of got me thinking, like, what's going on here? Why does it seem to be only one type of sound that is pushed commercially?
Just for context, do you mean now music or just?
I'm
for
talking
like
about
last how
now,
long?
but we can reference the past as well because it started in the 90s.
That's what I'm gonna say. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm also talking about now. So it just got me thinking as to whether there's something more sinister to it. Like, is there something where these labels are only propelling and pushing a certain type of artists and a certain type of sound? And that sound is trap, where the content is mainly about selling drugs, killing, bit of misogyny. I'm just wondering. I wanted to discuss it with my comrades. Do you lot feel like there is a systematic something going on, even if it's not necessarily dumbing us down? Is there something to it to where only one thing is being pushed and there's not really much balance within the commercial realm of hip hop?
Well, it's a great question. I feel like
It's gonna be a fun one.
it's going to be a fun one. Popular rap music is very much based on a few tenets. And if you want to go back to the 90s when it was gangster rap and, you know, the presentation of, you know, black men and black women in that space, to the present day with trap, with the drugs and, you know, the sex and all that kind of stuff. From a very, like, macro level, they're pushing the stuff that sells. And the stuff that sells is the kind of more stereotypes about black people, that, you know, non-black people and non-black listeners of hip-hop are interested in listening to, whether that's to really get a glimpse of what it is to be black and to be in the black community, or because they want their already predetermined views of black people to be confirmed. And that's been going on for time. I feel like in today's day and age, it's probably less damaging for the black community than maybe it was in the 90s.
Why do you feel that?
Because I feel like in the 90s, especially with like people, like especially in America, who was that person? Was it Dolores Tucker?
Okay.
Yeah. The
Who was attacking like gangster rap
Yeah.
Tucker.
in the 90s?
Yeah, she wasn't the only one, but yeah.
She wasn't the only one.
But
So-
Puck mentioned there in it.
Who?
Puck mentioned there in the song. I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas compared to now, we don't necessarily get as much like uproar about trap music or the commercial rap that we hear on the radio and all that stuff. It's kind of just there. It's like furniture now. Whereas back then, maybe when it was new and hip hop from what it was in the 80s, evolving into what it became in the 90s, as far as like the imagery of like rappers and women and the sex and the misogyny and the word bitch, the N-word and all that kind of stuff. It was new, it was fresh, it was frightening for a lot of communities, especially within our own. So there were concerted attempts to kind of quell that, to kind of like not kill, but you know, dampen and lessen the noise that gangster rap and commercial rap at the time was basically. So I feel like even in today's day and age, it might not be as like bad in terms of like how damaging it might be, but to the question of whether there's a systematic attempt, I'm not going to say it's not. I'm not going to say this argument doesn't have legs, because it does have legs. And I feel like it's definitely something worth discussing. What do you think, Mo?
Do I think there's a systematic attempt?
Yo, I can feel the tension in the room.
Because you know what it is? It's such a tricky one to answer.
Yeah.
Like, do I think it's the record label saying what should be? They can't decide what's hot. At the end of the day,
Yes,
we,
they absolutely
I
can.
think we do as consumers a lot as well, though. Regardless if they can, we still are the ones that say what's hot or not.
It's a chicken and an egg.
It is to a certain degree. Because if
Chicken-
I say to you, who's in the top 5, you're going to say Puck, right?
Yes,
And he was doing it in the 90s, right?
yes.
Do you get what I mean? So we still decide what we think is.
You can't use me as a measuring stick. Because
Are you not a fan?
Yes, but bro, most people that listen to music these days that are even our age, man, they love a lot of the commercial stuff that's like being released now. So I'm not a good measuring.
Not you personally, though. I'm saying, but we as fans are the ones that decide what's hot.
Are you talking about we in this
Not
room? or
we
you
in this
talking
room.
about
I'm just saying the people that listen to hip hop
okay, to a degree.
to a degree. But if we, how can I put it? Oh, it's such a tricky one.
I feel like it's a chicken and egg thing. I'll use Giggs as an example. Obviously, Talking the Hardest came out. He got signed off the back of that. So that was the streets determining what's hot for the labels to then sign, sort of thing. But there are other examples, I'm sure, of labels seeing a trend forecasting, as is now the popular phrase, and kind of gauging and channeling a strategy towards making music for their artists around that trend. So it's very much like what came first. And I think in some situations, you can say it's the label kind of manufacturing it, but you can also say it's the streets and us as fans kind of seeing something and it propelling.
It was, but so if we go back to the 90s, when there was an issue with Dolores Tucker or whoever else making comments about because Snoop was a big one that they were going at as well.
Yeah,
But we're the ones that decided, obviously we were young then, but I'm just saying the fans back then are the ones that decided, nah, these are our people. We're going to still listen to Snoop. We're still listening to Puck. We're still listening to NWO. Do you get what I mean? So it's like, if we've now decided that,
but them man were already hot.
but why were they hot?
The labels,
okay, but
the
why
labels,
were
the
they?
labels,
But why were they hot?
The labels had already put the necessary money into
You think it was the-
propelling them into a certain point. So by that time, we had already loved them. So we weren't going to throw these people in the bin.
But we've
For me,
all, but we
the
still,
whole
but we,
is-
but
the
we
whole is-
also decided that music's hot. The music was hot.
Yeah, of course, the streets.
Yeah.
To a degree. To a degree, bro. The streets can only take it so far.
Yeah, because
Up until a certain point, the labels now come in and be like, all right, cool, you know what, boom, we're pushing this.
yeah,
This
because
is gonna
but,
be the new
but
hot
why
thing.
did they push it though? Because the streets fucked with it.
It depends on the stance you want to take. Me personally, I feel like they pushed it because there was less of a message in a lot of that type of music. A lot of the gangster shit, there wasn't.
Do you not just think it's
there wasn't
easier
really
to-
much of a message there, and it was easier for that to be pushed.
Because it's easier to cross over.
But then we,
Because what you're gonna,
That's subjective.
It's-
Easier to cross over. I don't know.
I'll give you an example. What? Say the certain songs. You're gonna more likely hear that in a club. The ones that are disrespectful, the ones that are. Then I Know I Can from Nas. So like, as much as we,
Well, I never want to hear Nas I Can in a club.
do you get what I mean though? So at the end of the day, no, but that's my point though. So as much as they are dumbing it down, we are also the ones that are going, this is what I want to hear in a club though.
I might be fast forwarding the conversation, but do we not have to look at ourselves and the kind of music that we're making?
Tell me more.
So when we talk about, you know, fucking bitches, money, cash holes, all that kind of stuff, we could argue that the label's making them do this stuff. We could also say that this is something that the artist wants to do. The artist wants to put out music that is that kind of topic and that subject matter, knowing that it's going to be popular and it's going to be successful. That's going to help their bottom line, help them rise in the ranks, help them become a big fixture, whilst also dumbing down what commercial rap can be.
Okay.
So do we not have to look at ourselves a little bit as well and the type of music we're making? Because there's loads of mainstream rappers. There's also a lot of conscious rappers. The conscious rappers aren't getting the time of day as much because they're being drowned out by the mainstream rappers who know that if they rap about selling drugs, shooting people, fucking bitches, it's going to get them more attention and get them more plays.
But what if that's all they know? Not all they know, but what if that's the life they come from? What if they really do come from killing people, fucking women, and making money? Like, what if that's their life?
Yeah.
I can't tell a man from Harlem if he wants to come up and all he's rapping is about selling drugs. If that's the life he's lived, regardless of it dumbing it down for us or not, we should be able to still appreciate that's all he knows.
Yeah, it's art, right? I want to be clear of what I'm saying in it. I appreciate and understand that different people come from different walks of life, innit? And you're going to express what you know. That's fine, innit? But there was a certain time in hip hop. They're going to make me sound like such a fucking old head.
You are an old head.
You know what?
Please
Just
accept this.
accept it, man. I will move. My heart's still.
There was a certain point in rap here where it seemed like the music being made was mainly coming from a place where there was a political message. There was a lot of black pride associated to the music being pushed and promoted and made, and it just seemed a lot more responsible. At a certain point, it kind of felt like there was a shift, and suddenly the Public Enemy. I don't even listen to Public Enemy. The Public
Shout out
Enemy.
Public Enemy,
the-
though.
Shout out to Public Enemy.
all day. All
Shout out
day,
to Public
but
Enemy.
I think I have to say that because
People think you're out here listening to Public Enemy.
I'm sounding like an old head, didn't it?
So wait, you think it's going to make you sound less like an old head by not mentioning them?
No, but just I haven't really listened to them like that, but I acknowledge their status as legends. Do you know what I mean?
What's wrong with this guy?
But yeah, so shit, I forgot what I was saying. Yeah, so there came a point where the Public Enemies and the X-Clans and the flipping Brand Nubians and
Question though, Pete.
all these other artists that were coming through, Rakims and that in the 80s that had a message and stuff like that, they stopped being pushed.
Were they ever mainstream though? Because I feel like at that time, we didn't really have a mainstream or underground. It was kind of all in the same kind of field, I feel like. I think there was a shift between mainstream and underground. I think, and shout out to Justin Hunt, he said it was around 96 when De La Soul dropped Stakes Is High, Nas dropped It Was Written. There was a clear divide.
No, there was a shift before that. I think there was a shift when NWA came out.
Cool.
That's
that
when-
was a shift.
Yeah,
That was
there were gangster rappers that preceded them just before, but none were as popular as them. Do you know
But
what I mean?
they also-
so when they came through and it was very effective, that shifted a lot, man.
But then
it allowed artists from that ilk to make the same type of music, and I guess that's what the label saw and thought, you know what, this could be profitable. Let's push more of that. Let's stop pushing that.
But I disagree with you to a certain degree because didn't KRS-One rap about an underage minor once?
Criminal Minded.
And when did that drop?
87?
Do you get what I mean? So it's
But he was still conscious.
but look what he's rapping about, mashing an underage girl.
He was conscious and gangster. He was
Give
talking
me
about
more
shooting
context
people.
though, because I haven't listened to this.
Like there's a song I don't know it verbatim, but I've heard it where he essentially the girl's 14 and he's moving to her, and in the video you see him moving to her as well.
And generally, like when he first came out with BDP, Criminal Minded was a lot more gangster than conscious.
So as much as there was conscience, there was still fuckiness going on amongst it. So even at its core, when it first came out, that was still around.
So you're saying that it was always there.
It was always there. Just
So you're saying that the labels always.
no, I do think there's some. I do think labels are they do push certain things, but I think at the same time, it's always been there. My point being,
Yeah, it's a thing of what, again, it
Balance,
came
isn't
first.
it? Yeah. Okay, cool. And that balance is fine. And that's probably a different conversation. But when something is being pushed more than the other, or there's only one thing being pushed, that's where like someone like me starts looking at it with the side eye and kind of looking at the whole scope of things. And that's kind of where I've been at for a while.
Well, Pete, it's not in the label's best interest to push the more positive stuff if it means they're making less money.
So you've answered my question.
The label's
It
going to
doesn't
push.
have to make less money though. It comes down to promotion. I was listening to an interview with Lord Jamar, and he was talking about, because somebody asked him a similar question, like when all these gangster rappers were coming out and making all these tunes, that were essentially like encouraging the destruction of our communities. Where were all the conscious rappers? Why did they stop? Why didn't they diss them, man? Lord Jamar was like, no, we did. We were going at them, man. But you just weren't hearing it because the labels weren't putting money behind budgets no more. So, like, who's to say it doesn't, it can't make money?
Yeah,
but
but
if the label's not pumping it, then of course it ain't going to make P.
Yeah,
if
but-
no one's seeing it, of course it ain't going to make money.
But I also think it's not as easy to say we're going to pump money in this and it's going to become successful. Like,
Bro, but
If you're
there's
fan-
programming and conditioning though, bro. These labels do it all the time, bro.
Yeah, but cool.
Like if you look at look at us, look at like music now, look at hip hop now, bro. Like we're definitely programmed to enjoy some bullshit.
That's a fact.
100% these
There you
labels
go.
do that.
No, I give him that.
It's true though. These labels definitely do that, bro. Like if you look at that, listen to some of the music being made, man. A lot of it's crap, but we are so conditioned and programmed to where we listen to it so much, and it's kind of like, oh, this is actually alright.
all right.
But come on, man.
Do
like-
you in your heart of hearts think that Talib Kweli I Try would be as popular as any Drake song if it was pushed the same way?
No.
So it's not as easy as to say give him the right amount of promotion and it's going to be successful.
I'm not
It's gonna be
I'm not saying that it's easy, but we can't ignore that scope though. We can't ignore the power in promotion. We can't ignore the power in having the backing of a label, bro. We can't.
I'm not ignoring it, but I'm saying it's just not. I don't think it's going to be as effective.
Even if
because
the
of,
label
because of the
pushes
content.
the biggest amount of money behind it,
I don't think it's going to be as effective because of the content.
it's never going to be.
I mean, now, yeah, because hip hop's in a certain place.
Even
Of course so. But back then, you
Back
can't
when-
tell me
back
this.
when-
You can't pose this argument
back when though.
back in like early 90s. You can't pose this argument, bro.
That's but then
So
there wasn't a mix.
Hang on,
it's
hang
like,
on, hang on.
Yemi's about to get any
yeah,
flags.
because Yemi was Yemi.
No, so let's say Black Star Definition. Is that as successful as California Love?
No.
Because it was on a label. It was on Raucous.
But Raucous is a different type of label. Everything you say, I've got a response for.
Raucous was
Look,
definitely-
Raucous was an underground label, bro.
It wasn't-
It definitely didn't have as much money as Death Row via Interscope.
Cool.
Via Universal. Come on, man.
Fine.
Elevias.
But again, we were at that point where conscious rappers, cool, they were about, but there wasn't as much. Labels may not have seen as much of an investment in them because of the content.
Yeah, but bro, that had happened when the shape of hip hop had already kind of been shaped. We had already seen we had already seen like the split between the mainstream shiny suit, polished type of sound versus the underground. So what Black Star were making were more the underground stuff, but by that point we knew what it was.
There was a
The
difference.
distinction was already made that all right, cool. If you make this type of music, you can be as successful as this. If you make this type of music, you're only going to go but so far. So that's what happened there. You can't compare fucking Black Star to
Fine.
California.
All right, fine. When do you think the split was?
Probably around like 95, 96.
95, 96.
Around that time.
So-
around like when Bad Boys started really becoming popular, when Death Row really started becoming popular as well. But
When
the
you said
precursor of
94,
that was like when the content in the music started changing. That's when it made it easier for certain men from the streets to enter the game and make a certain type of music, and that be the predominant type of rap being made.
Okay. So if we're going to compare someone like Poor Righteous Teachers,
Yes.
they were around what? They started what, like 92, 93?
Yeah.
Something like that. I'm sure because we didn't have an underground, we didn't have labels like Raucous. I'm sure they were on major labels or labels that were a subsidiary of major labels. Are Poor Righteous Teachers at that point more successful or as successful, or is their message being propelled as much as, let's say, an NWA or Tupac or people like that?
Of course they weren't. And that's not to say that some of these artists weren't on labels that weren't pushing them, providing them funds to promote their music. They were, but because at that time, even though you were seeing the distinction between different type of hip hop being made, that sound wasn't all the way defunct. Like you could still make P off that, but it just weren't going to be as much as what certain other men were making. So you were still going to have groups like Poor Righteous Teachers, like, you know, making music, putting videos out there and making a little bit of P. But I don't think that's an indication that labels still weren't, you know, masterminding some crazy plan.
So no matter what example that I put out, there's going to be an element of the labels having a master plan to push us.
Bro, the labels dictate everything. We can't escape that.
Yeah, from
As
radio
much as we
programming
want to
everything,
empower our
I agree-
artists,
I agree with you there.
That's
I-
100% it, bro. If the labels now decided that, and that's why I think
It's not just the labels that are dumbing us down, though.
no, the artists have a responsibility as well, of course.
and the fans.
I mean, the fans, by proxy of conditioning, there's only so much control that they have as well.
Not really,
I think
because you the same way you can find what you want,
Right.
so can the fans, right?
Yeah, but not. How many fans are really into like thought-provoking shit commercially? In this day, and that's where the conditioning and the programming comes into it. And that's why I asked this question: has there been a systematic attempt to dumb us down? Because now we're all at a point where, like, one sound and one type of hip hop and content is popular, and that's all it is.
Well, I personally think the labels and artists work in tandem. I don't think one is more to blame than the other.
If that was the case, bruv, then you wouldn't have someone like Lupe Fiasco having issues with Atlantic and releasing music and them saying you're not releasing this album, it's not ready because he ain't got a single. So I don't know if we can say that. And we've got bare labels that do that.
Yeah, but we're at that point. They're at that point now with Lasers and Lupe, where they don't think he. Well, I mean, yeah, he dropped albums before that had singles and stuff, and he wanted a fresh direction with Lasers, and they weren't having it. And that's fine, but I still think that's very much in the minority. I think the majority of artists that are on major labels want to do stuff that's more accessible, that's more commercial, more time, especially nowadays, because that's the climate we're in. Lupe is very much, I think, in the minority of people who wanted to do something different, and the label stopped him because we were in the climate where we needed a single.
So you don't think the accessibility has been shaped?
Yeah, by the labels and the artists. Because again, it goes back to gangster rap. A lot of them come from that life. And that life and the way they rapped about it became popular.
I think also,
And with that, the label saw that and was like, cool, we're doing this because it's popular. I don't think it is as potent with the kind of more conscious like subject matter because it's not as popular. Because maybe if we're going to be very, very real, not as many people want to hear about that sort of stuff. The empowering stuff. They just don't, for whatever reason.
Yeah, and listen, I'm of that sometimes too. There's a time and place, of course, but once upon a time, that was all that was being made.
But it's not all the label's fault that that's not the case anymore. That's all. It can't be. It can't just be the labels. Like, the labels aren't going to artists and saying, I'm going to sign you if you make this music. More often than not. It's going to be because a rapper has been doing bits of what he's been doing, and they see that and we're like, oh, we want a piece of that. And they're going to encourage him to keep doing the same thing.
But there are some artists that they do get approached by labels, and they are one way when they're approached by that label, and then by the time the label's gotten involved, everything has changed. Their sound has changed, their image has changed.
Do you want to name anyone?
Who can I think of? I can't think of anyone right now, but
I think depending on the artist, the label. Like, look at Kendrick. Kendrick can take it any which way he wants. So I do think the artists do have some power in it as well.
I think in the case of Kendrick, it might be a little different because he signed to Aftermath and Dr. Dre is obviously an artist. But on the flip of that, Jay Electronica, he's been on Rock Nation for 35 years.
Do you think it's
he didn't drop his thing because Jay wanted a single, right?
Yeah.
So
Do you think it's different when... I got a question for you. Do you think it's different when an artist signs you as to when a label signs you?
no.
So you don't think why Kendrick and Jay are the examples is because it's Jay-Z and Dr. Dre as opposed to a label, if you get what I mean?
Yeah, but Kendrick ain't really signed to Dre like that.
Is he not signed to Aftermath?
He's more, he's TDE now. And I think
but that's
through Aftermath. Yeah, but it doesn't seem like Dre's that involved.
Right, fair enough.
And
I wouldn't
Kendrick is so big that I think he dictates. Like,
Yeah, but they let him from the start dictate it. Do you get what I mean? So you think there's a difference when you sign to an artist as opposed to directly from a label, whereas the artist
It depends.
let you...
it depends on the
Breathe,
artist.
yeah.
Because someone like Kendrick, he already had displayed the ability to
He knew what he was doing already.
accessible music.
yeah, it depends. And then you could think about someone like Birdman and him signing Wayne. Obviously, Wayne was, from young doing what he was doing, and you see how that relationship went. So the artist to artist relationship when an artist signs you isn't always Ross and Meek or Wale, one of them. Meek.
Well, I think they're good now.
But even still, like, sometimes the artist who is signing you might not always have your best interest at heart as far as like the music goes.
Yeah.
Because they know how the business works and they want to make money and they're pushing you to make music that will make money. So I think it works in tandem. I think it works in tandem mainly. You ain't convinced.
Nah,
definitely not convinced.
Nah, I'm still putting it more on the labels, man.
I'm putting on the labels as well, but I do think if a rapper all he knows is that, it's a dicey one. But I do think that the labels do push a certain sound. But I think that changes as time goes on. If it's not, it was trap, then it was gangster rap, then it evolved into something else, now it's evolved into trap. It's just the evolution of it. And I think the artist also search for whatever's hot. So as much as the labels want it, I think artists also chase whatever's hot.
Plus, like now with the internet and social media, and the significance of labels isn't necessary as far as like making artists available to be consumed, isn't as significant as it once was. Again, you can find the kind of stuff that you want, and they're popular and they're being listened to in a way that they deem successful. So it might not be mainstream, but you know they're eating, they're successful, they're accomplished artists in their own rights. So the definition of what it means to be mainstream or popular has changed completely. Like it's not just we play you on the radio, you're getting interviewed on radio, this, that, and the other. It's not just that now, because anyone could. Corday could go on radio now. Earl could go on radio right now. You know what I'm saying? So it's democratized in that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's something to think about. So, more of the story. Salute to a word to Jay Huss. It's a big conspiracy.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think so. I think so, man.
It's a question.
It's a deeper, darker criminal.
Listeners, I hope
Wait, hold on.
It's a deeper,
Pete, say
darker
that again?
criminal link. 100%, bro.
deeper, dark criminal link.
For sure.
Sorry, I just wanted Peter to get that off.
For
I
sure.
genuinely just wanted Peter
Listeners,
to get that
I
off.
hope you
For sure.
know now, finally, just how much of an old head this Peter
For
is.
sure, bruv.
It's a big conspiracy.
But we've got no conscious rappers that are like really killing it commercially, other than like someone like a Kendrick.
They never really did, though, man. They never did.
It never did.
They never did.
Yeah, you had the
No,
Common.
they did.
Common
They never did, bro.
Nah,
They
tell
did,
me
bro.
one that
They never
consistently was on
did.
top. Common came and went.
It depends on what you mean by
he had-
success as well.
He had bits and pieces. Common was here, like in and out. But tell me one that's been a pinnacle point for like a decade.
In the 80s and like the
Brother,
early
you're
90s and
stop going back to when I was before I was born, my guy.
That's a small sample size because the
And even
room for
the-
success was smaller.
And even then, when you go back to the 80s, I'm
A
saying-
conscious rapper wasn't doing 2-pack numbers. Hasn't done 2-pack numbers. Hasn't done Eminem numbers.
Pacs
You know what I'm
are-
saying?
he's a-
and we need to look into. And
Pacs are conscious
he
rappers.
also said
Fine.
bitches ain't shit, but hoes are tricks. So what are we
No,
doing?
he didn't say that.
He didn't say that actually, did he?
Don't do that.
My bad. He said. I mean, there was a video when he goes.
I mean, the word bitch has left his mouth a lot
a
of times.
few times.
So what?
How conscious can he be?
Conscious MCs can't say the word bitch.
Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're doing for your goal?
And also,
Louis.
when you look at the 80s, there were a lot of, as much as they were conscious, there was also a lot of nasty things they were rapping about. KRS in particular. So it's like,
Don't say they. That's one.
I said KRS. But no, I saw a few. I just didn't write. I saw KRS and I was meant to write down another one. But my point being, yeah, he was conscious, but he also rapped about stuff you can't rap about today. Let a rapper talk about a 14-year-old, he'll get cancelled. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to be fair here. It's like, that was also being pushed. So I think rappers are going to want to rap about what they want to rap about, but labels are going to push whatever's hot.
And how much of it is affected by what's actually happening in our communities?
What do you mean?
Is the music, the popular music, also a reflection of what's happening in our communities?
Yes.
Do we get to pick what's hot? I mean, we get to, but who buys the most?
The reason why I asked that, because I think, just thinking back to when Public Enemy were doing their thing, it seemed like there was a lot of a lot of political unrest. There was a lot of a lot of social commentary that was being absorbed by these artists, and I guess the music was more reflecting the times.
Do you think we
as
had more
well,
control?
And then the crack era hit, and I guess that was even more reason why they felt the need to use their voices and put certain messages in their music. But the crack era was
Was a black
our version. But our version of that is like Molly and Lean and that, and that's still a thing. But our artists aren't really talking about that as far as it being a negative. They're talking about it from the perspective where it's cool to use.
Can I ask you a question though? Could we?
So
No,
so on that, like, I forgot the point I was trying to make.
my fault.
Listen,
So yeah.
No, I genuinely had a question. Do you think it's because back then we could control what we like? Whereas now
We can still
because-
control what we like.
No, because the biggest consumer of rap music is white people, respectfully. So they also dictate what's number one, number two. Do you know what I mean? So therefore, they could dictate what's hot as well a lot of the times, whereas back then we did.
And we were still doing gangster rap.
But it was also mixed with both.
Yeah. I hear that. Plus, the 90s generally, well, I don't even know if I could say that, but I feel like in the 90s, not that it was a more conscious era, it was an era that where more and more rappers and artists were taking influence from the conscious period, as opposed to now where it seems that a lot of artists are desensitized or detached from what's going on around them to only rap about what they're rapping about. So maybe the shift in like how you approach art has changed too, in that respect. In the 90s, you couldn't avoid like, you know, Afrocentrism, dashikis, X-Clan, whatever they were talking about, all that kind of stuff. Whereas now, it might be a little bit easier to avoid it because there's so much going on in the world. Digga D doesn't have to rap about, you know, the police. He can rap about drilling, and that is his bottom line done, sort of thing. So there's a lot of circumstances around this debate, which means that it's always going to be murky because we're never going to know for sure. We're only going to have our opinions and our views. So it's a big conspiracy.
Yeah.
Bet.